Hey, we're back with another video, and today we're going to react to Michael Knowles fires back at the woke student who supports BLM and believes in systematic racism. Okay, let's get it, man. I want to hop right into this because fire for days, man. I'm always ready for these. Oh, it's already on. Let's get it. Let's go.
I know you talked about BLM being a terrorist movement or associating it with terrorism. However, do you recognize the fact that there are systemic inequalities against Black and also minority individuals on this campus and in the world, frankly, and in the United States? And how do you think BLM kind of fits in with that? Do you think that it's just a terrorist movement, or that it has some merit in the fact that there is systemic racism in this country?
No. Yeah, hold on. Before he speaks, to say that BLM is a terrorist organization is completely weird. It's just weird. I'm gonna use a good word, weird, but it's completely inaccurate, completely a misinterpretation of what they stand on and what they stand for, and absolutely ridiculous. And I watched the documentary that Candace Owens did on BLM. I got a lot to say as we go along with this conversation.
I think that the only systemic racism on university campuses, the only discrimination that pertains to Black students here, is that Black students and Hispanic students are given an advantage on the basis of their race in terms of admissions relative to white and Asian students. Now, the Supreme Court did strike that down as being obviously illegal. And
hold on, before he finishes what he said, I'm not going to let him go on and misinterpret y'all, right? They can't be given an advantage if they're already at a disadvantage, and even through given an opportunity, they still don't have an advantage over on whites because whites are dominating in those college campuses more than they are. It still is not an advantage. Still, it's not even close to an advantage. So I just want to interrupt to say that part. First things first. It's not even close to an advantage. Let's go. Hey.
and deeply unjust. But many schools had a little wink and a nod when they responded to that decision. They said, oh, great, we won't ask the race anymore, but we're going to keep asking you in your personal statements, to tell us a little about yourself. So that is a not only de facto, but de jure discrimination on the basis of race on campuses. Now, if you say Black people don't turn out very well a lot of the time in America, I'm not denying that, okay? There are major serious problems affecting Black people in America that are legitimate and need to be addressed. Obviously, 70% of Black babies are born out of wedlock. The majority of Black babies in New York are killed before they're ever born through abortion. There are a lot of, obviously, crime. There are a lot of problems. So that should be addressed. I think that should be addressed, in part by the government and by the political community. I'm not saying just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and ignore it and, you do you and I'll do me. I think there needs to be some kind of political solution to that. The political solution, though, it needs to be properly political and not vigilante and not so violent and extortionist as BLM was. Some people observed that BLM appeared to stand for...
okay, guys, this was funny to me, right? No disrespect to white people, but it's funny how, when it comes to violence, right, white people will have revolutions that are just violent, bloody revolutions, like the French Revolution, any revolution they've had throughout history, the American Revolution, the Canadian Revolution. Come on now, there's multiple revolutions where there's been, violence done, right? But for some reason, when Blacks do it, it's no, don't do that. It's not right. It's what you shouldn't do. But there's plenty of violent revolutions that they've had throughout history. Sometimes, in all reality, and I know you guys, regardless of how you feel about this or not, you're going to believe it. Sometimes it requires a punch in the face to get the message across, right? Violence is sometimes required in order to get a message across. The Russian Revolution would have never been the Russians would have never been where they are today had they not thrown out the oligarchs that controlled that power, controlled them at the time. I know there are some movements that did nonviolent movements like Gandhi, Martin Luther King, things like that. But those movements also, if you think about the Martin Luther King, we're still having the same conversations today. I mean, they may have been a little bit of effective to move us forward a little bit, but it hasn't been ultimately overwhelmingly effective than revolution is. Revolution completely alters the system. It completely alters the system, and sometimes it can be violent. But that's interesting that he pointed out the fact that that there are some riots when it comes to the whole injustices that happen to Black people in America, and specifically blame BLM for them is the weird part, But let's keep going.
Large mansions, because the people who ran that organization seemed to enrich themselves quite a lot on the $100 million or thereabouts that BLM took in.
Okay, and I want to make a point to that too, because I was loving that they went there with that, right? If these Christian evangelists, because he's Christian, right? He's a Christian evangelist. He's a Christian evangelist. Well, actually, I'm sorry, he's not Christian. He's Catholic, but come on now, let's be real. It's all under the same merit, right? There's slight differences, but they believe that Jesus Christ died on the cross for their sins. That's the premise of what they believe, right? So let's talk about it, right? So they took in $100 million and promised that the people that worked in BLM would get either 1 to 3% of what came out of that $100 million, which is $1 million for everybody who is part of the organization, right? Are you going to hold that same merit to Joel Osteen, Creflo A. Dollar, Pastor Hagee, Kenneth Copeland? Are you going to hold that same merit to them when they brought in hundreds of millions of dollars for their Christian congregations? I'm just curious to know that. I want to ask that question in the comments for you guys.
We know that dozens of people were killed in the BLM riots. We know that lots of private property was destroyed.
Yes,
we know lots of stores were looted. None of this does anything to advance racial justice. All of those people should have been locked up for a long time. Unfortunately, very mainstream Democrats bailed them out of jail. I mean, Kamala Harris posted a fundraiser on her social media to bail out the rioters, not just the peaceful protesters, the rioters.
Just like Donald Trump bailed out the people that attacked the Capitol on January 6th. The contradictions and that live amongst these people just blow me away. If you think those people should have been bailed out, should the January 6ers have been bailed out who attacked the Capitol? One of the attacked the Capitol of the United States, made us look completely weak. I'm just curious, like, you gonna hold that same merit to the other side?
Staffers for Joe Biden did the same thing. So I don't think there's really anything redeeming in the BLM movement. I think it was thoroughly corrupt from the beginning. It was incontrovertibly run by Marxists who had an agenda far beyond racial justice in their minds. They had a highly leftist ideological agenda that should be totally routed from society, and people should actually try to work on matters of justice for black people and for everybody, but we do that within the political order, not with...
And I want you guys to keep in mind, when they talk about Marxists, all Marx people wanted was it to be fair for the workers. The in-depth it goes deeper depending on where you want to look at it. Like the Russians, how they viewed it, Lenin, Trotsky, people like that. I forgot, Lenin, whatever. Anyways, how Stalin looked at it, how Pol Pot looked at it, how certain people looked at it, right? But the overarching premise of Marxism is that capitalism is completely, it's flawed, and the flaws in it like create inequality for workers. That's it. So when they talk about Marxists, I always think like, what's the problem with Marxism and socialism? On the premise that you're just trying to make society better for everybody. Like, you're trying to make society an equal place and a fair place for everybody. Like, what's the issue with this? I've always had a weird question about that, but let's keep going, Marco. No.
The violent terrorists.
Yeah, I have one more thing to add. So I know you mentioned affirmative action, how that was knocked down by the Supreme Court. So I'd like to bring to the table that affirmative action, while it is seen as discriminating against white and Asian Americans, I saw the statistics after it was revoked, they got in at a higher rate into colleges. However, do you also recognize the fact that once these policies are in action, we're removing black and also minoritized individuals from the cycle of poverty that technically is what causes a lot of these issues that we see with murder, with the way that they act in our country? And so by removing affirmative action, do you not think that this just makes the issue worse? If we are trying to get to a state where we don't see as much of this crime or other actions that are usually caused by minoritized individuals, removing affirmative action, I think, makes that worse and not better.
Well,
dang, that was a really good point she just made. Let's see him talk his way around this one. He's going to talk his way around it. I know he is, because Michael Knowles is a really good talker. I actually like him. I do, but... it's like, yeah, that's a really good point. Like, if you remove affirmative action programs, which you already know that there's an issue, you have admitted at the beginning of this conversation that there's an issue in the black community, and these are the issues that deal with the black community. But affirmative action gives them the opportunity to go into some of these places where they may not be as qualified, but they can learn to become more qualified. It gives them the opportunity. It opens the door for them, right? So, with that being said, right, why would you roll back on that? Wouldn't rolling back on that create more of the problem that you're trying to destroy? Let's keep going.
Really, really good follow-up question. I am not convinced that just money or getting a better job or something is going to solve a lot of the problems among the black community. I think a lot of that has to do with religion and family formation and even some actual incentives from the government. But I don't.
And this is why white people need to kind of stay out of these conversations, 1,000%. The only thing that's causing the problems in the black community is poverty. In black middle class areas, you see absolutely no crime. In rich black areas, you see absolutely no crime. Now, in white areas, where is the poverty relegated to? It's relegated to the poor communities, right? I asked a Ku Klux Klan member this one time. Do rich white people commit crimes? I'll leave that in there, and I won't say anything back to that. But I'll just say this part. Poverty is relegated to, poverty, most areas where you find crime, most areas where you find inequality, most of the areas where you find most of the problems in every civilization is the poverty-stricken areas. And it's strange that even per capita and overall, black people are more in poverty than any other group. And they've had the most put on them compared to any other group in this entire society. Even more than the Asians. I know people try to make the excuse of the Asians, but black have had more put on them than anyone else.
I don't take what I view to be a reductive, materialist view of things. That, if to use an example in the Middle East that Barack Obama would bring up, if we just give Al-Qaeda terrorists cell phones, they'll stop setting off bombs or something. I don't think that's how human nature really works. But to your point on the potential downsides of removing black people from the universities, I think that would be a problem. If you have any segment of society that's not really integrated into the society, that is a big problem. So I know people on the right are fond of talking about meritocracy. I find that concept a little bit dubious because there are lots of different ways to adjudicate merit. And so to suggest that just an SAT score is how we understand merit, I think loses sight of a lot of other political goods that are important. We're not just robots who take tests, but we're human beings and social creatures who live within a polity. So I agree with all that. I just don't think affirmative action did all that much for a lot of black students. In part, just one example of this would be
because affirmative action mostly helped white women. It did. Affirmative action programs are more effective towards white women. DEI programs were open to everybody. That's why it didn't have much merit. Most of the times when they created programs to help the black community, they never helped the black community. They just didn't.
The problem of mismatch, that if you take a student who is simply not academically qualified to be at an academic institution, he's either going to fail or the standards are going to be lowered. Neither of those goals are good. So in the case of the student failing, it's like there was no cost to it. The student might fail and now have $100,000 in debt. And then he goes to the same community college he might have gone to in the first place, but he's trapped in a serious cycle of poverty. That's the first one. The second one is that the university could lower the standards. That's happened everywhere. And the third one is you could just have the creation of a bunch of fake academic departments to house students of any race who are just not up to snuff academically. That's what's happened with all the studies departments, the gender studies, black studies, this studies, that's American studies. It's all kind of a way to have academic departments for people who are not as academically rigorous. And that's a very hard saying, but it's just how it's played out. That's how they enter into the university. So I'm all for bringing people up, and I'm all for integrating everybody into society, and I'm all for taking very seriously the particular problems that afflict black people and dealing through the government to solve them. I'm totally game for it, but I just don't think that we should do it in ways, one, that would harm society broadly, that would be contrary to the common good, and two, ironically enough in this case, that would harm the individuals that you're supposedly helping. I don't think anybody benefits from that.
I still disagree, but thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh man, I ain't gonna lie, that was really, I like him, man. I like Michael Knowles, man. Michael Knowles is a very proper dude, man. He puts things together really well. And even though he's on the right, I think he's the one that you could have probably one of the best conversations with overall. But yeah, man, definitely, I understand. If he's all for that, he's all for that, and he can't see the benefit in some of the things, and I can kind of understand where he's coming from on that premise. However, though, like the riots and things like that, man, violence sometimes it ends to a means, and I think sometimes it's better for society. Not better, but it definitely it drives conversation. It drives conversation. When Dylan Roof went in that church and unalived 9 black people, it drove conversation on whether or not the Confederate flag should be something that we should fly everywhere. Which is weird because think about it. In Nazi Germany, they don't even have the swastika. They don't have the swastika anywhere. They don't have any paraphernalia of that. They teach the history, but they don't have any paraphernalia of that. In America, we have Confederate flags flying in there. Oh, little man. Yeah, but we have Confederate flags flying everywhere. And I'm just like, I'm curious, like, if y'all want us to forget the history, why do you keep bringing it up? But anyways, I'm out. Peace.